Good morning, everybody. First of all, I did try to set up some opening notes, but I really suck at that, so I'm just going to kind of roll with it here. First of all, welcome to the first BSides Calgary. Took a lot of work, more than expected, but we managed to pull it off, and to have a sold-out house is an absolute pleasure for year one here. So thank you for participating. Thank you for joining our event. And for those people that didn't quite make it in, I apologize. If we had more seating, they would have been here, but I'll send them a note later. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today and tomorrow. We've got all kinds of topics from covering the darknet to the origins of BSides. We're quite honored to have a couple of the co-founders of BSides, BSides Global, I guess, being our keynotes for today and tomorrow. We have Jack Daniel, who probably needs no introduction, or shouldn't, and Chris Nickerson tomorrow for our second keynote of the event. So a couple of housekeeping notes here. Code of conduct. We're all adults. Let's keep it clean. No hacking the networks and stuff, please. State is still doing exams, and if we mess with them, we might not get back here next year. So just keep it clean, have some fun, enjoy the presentations, and make sure we check out the sponsors outside as well. We've got a lot of great sponsors that help make this happen, that help to fill the swag bag and get us the great T-shirts and badges and everything else. So without their support, this really would not have happened this year. So please drop by, talk to them, see what they're up to, just to say hi and thank you more than anything. Outside of that, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Nobody came here to listen to me, so I'm going to introduce Jack Daniel, and he's going to kick off our keynote here for day one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting up at this hour. For HackerCon, 9's ungodly early. Let's see if I can deal with technology now. Let's see. Look at that. It may work. So, BSides Calgary, hopefully you figured that out by now. That's where we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about history and hackers and stuff. I have a day job. I work for Tenable Network Security. They let me do stuff like this. A lot of what I do for BSides is because they support me in doing that. It's interesting that the vulnerability management vendors have traditionally supported BSides. All the big names in our space tend to be engaged with BSides. And so the other folks that do what the sales teams I work with do at other companies are all part of this community. And the dude who gets too much credit for BSides, I'm an enabler. I connect people, provide a little moral support, and I get way too much credit. But moving on, I'm very happy. I was here last fall, and I thought, hey, I kind of like Calgary. I'd never been here before. It's got kind of a subtle and sometimes not so subtle weirdness, but you're all just cool with it. It's not like Austin, where everybody's like, we're weird. It's like, hey, I know, just calm down. Really, it's all right. It's just like, why is there a nicely dressed woman in a mini skirt chasing a rabbit around a little patch of grass in the middle of the parking lot? And why is it I'm the only one in the street who even notices or cares? Oh, it's Calgary. Okay. So I love, and yeah. And I really mean that. I have no ulterior motives in saying how much I love Canada. Okay. Maybe just one, more than one. So I guess this is my payback for making fun of Rob Ford. Wow. So anyway, you are here. What does that mean? All those blue dots are where BSides have been around the globe. The green dots, if you can spot them, are first-time event cities coming up later in 2016, starting with us. You'll note there's some interesting places like Medellin, Colombia, Cusco, Peru, Zurich, Kiev, Athens, and Tel Aviv coming up. On top of 5th annual one in Algiers is coming up soon. Trying to remember how many. The guys in Sao Paulo, Brazil do 2 to 4 a year. This is event number 251 since July of 2009. First one here in Calgary. There are at least, as you can see, 10 first-time cities, probably 14 first-time cities in 2016. This is most of the events are in the U.S., but this is the 22nd BSides to happen here in Canada. So far, we're at 90 cities in 21 countries, every continent except Antarctica. We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there. We get there, we'll do it on a boat. There was almost one on a boat, but then they realized what the cost was going to be, so that didn't happen. Disclaimer, this is my story as I remember it and with my perspective. I spend too much time with PowerPoint, and my version of PowerPoint has become sentient, and sometimes it makes fun of me and argues with me. And for the record, I do remember, actually, I just drank coffee and water for breakfast. I may have been at Milk Tiger last night, but that was before midnight, so it wasn't this morning. So here we go. How did we start here? There are a couple of slides in here just for Chris. This is a house in West Las Vegas. The air conditioning didn't work in the big room. So garbage bags and duct tape and anything else we could find got stuck on every window and everything else. Yeah, that's fans and portable air conditioners so that we kept it under about 85, 90 in that room. Well, maybe under 90, under 95. But then we had this happen. Right, HackerCons. What do we have at HackerCons? We have a room full of people. If you want to go to the talks were great. There were talks upstairs and downstairs. There's a swimming pool out back. There was a grill out back. If you didn't want to be part of the conversation that was going on in the presentation, you had a formal hall con. That's the edge of a gender issues and InfoSec panel at a HackerCon in July of 2009. 5 years later, RSA started making a really big deal about addressing gender issues in InfoSec in a panel. That's Jen Jabish, Lee Honeywell, Lee Hallowell, and I think lawyer Liz was on that. It was an absolute all-star panel. It was amazing. And there wasn't really, we weren't trying to change the world. We were just trying to provide an alternative. I have to say we don't compete with Black Hat because we make nice with everybody we play with now. Most BSides aren't parallel with another event. We try not to step on other people's toes because I had to spend way too many years apologizing to people and putting things back together. But Black Hat maybe needed a nudge back then. Can we say that? They needed a nudge, and we were it. Oh, yeah, and we did that first year. Everything didn't quite go perfectly smoothly. Chris, this one's for you, right? I know. I thought we agreed never to mention that again. Look, we didn't actually burn the house down, and since the circuit breaker didn't trip and the smoke alarm didn't go off, the landlord stuffed the Colt 1911 back in his belt and didn't shoot Chris. It was okay. And so we got here, right? Here we are these years later. So how do we get here? So this is the first time here in Calgary. Who's here, first time ever going to a BSides event? Look around, Chris. Look at this. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. So what does it take to build this, a growing community? It takes a growing foundation. So unlike those other conferences that I won't name, to build a growing community, you need a growing foundation. And that means every one of you who's never been at a BSides before and doesn't know exactly what to expect today and tomorrow, you're part of the foundation of BSides because that's the way it grows. So thank you for joining us, and thank you and welcome to the Founders Circle, whether it's your first time or, like mine, the 56th BSides I've been at. So who else? What else did it take? We can't not talk about 303. The 303 crowd, the Denver area crowd, rented a house. Chris rented a house and offered that up for that first B-Sides. And a lot of 303 people were there and made things happen. But a lot of other people. And I wanted to mention 303 because one of the things I occasionally hear from outside of the Denver area is that it's a clique. They don't play nice. They have their own things. They do their own thing at DEF CON. They do that Sky Talks thing because they're like too good. They did it. I had never met anybody in person from 303 when I showed up at the first event. Others of us hadn't. I was pretty well known in the Northeast U.S., Boston, Providence area, and to a certain extent the D.C. But I showed up and I didn't know what I could do, but I figured I will show up and I will do stuff. I'd helped to line up a little sponsorship and a little organization, and I just did stuff. And anybody that showed up and did stuff, which was everybody at that first B-Sides, was just part of the family. So 303 was a critical catalyst in it, but everybody else just made things happen. And some interesting stuff happened. Strangers became friends who became family. And when I say that, I mean it. I have a reputation as a cranky old bastard because I am. However, I have friends from the B-Sides community who are closer than my real family because of this. It's why I get to as many B-Sides as I can and want to be part of the community as it grows. So family, yes, complete with creepy uncles. I think it's making fun of me. So how does this work? Oh, the audio's not playing.
And so on, and so on.
Let's try that again. You probably.
Well, you know how these things start. One guy tells another guy something, then he tells two friends, and they tell two friends, and they tell their friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
So that's what it did. It was word of mouth. It took off. The first year there were 5 events, as I recall: Mountain View, California, San Francisco, Austin, Denver, and then back to Vegas. What does it take to make this happen? Like the event we're sitting at now. It takes organizers, the people that struggle to make this happen. It's like, we're going to do it simply, right? I'm going to get some people to nod. We're going to do it pretty simple our first time out. Well, we're going to do this too. We're going to, oh my God, what have we gotten into? But they stick to it and make it happen, right? It takes people to show up and speak. It takes sponsors. It can't happen without that. The cost can't be as low as it is without that, or free for sometimes. It takes volunteers and it takes participants. It takes all of those working together. And a couple of those words are important to me. So sort of my ethos here. First, participants, not attendees. You are not an attendee, you are a participant. Please participate. Be part of it. Sponsors, not vendors. Yes, the giant trade shows have sponsors, right? We want the folks that sponsor these events to be part of the community. Many of them are. Many of us are. The company I used to work for was the first company to put down any money at all. And we spent more than we could justify, but they saw the future in it. And nobody had heard of Astaro, and I think the few years of B-Sides before they were acquired by Sophos got Astaro more publicity, at least in the U.S. market, than they had ever done with anything they'd done. It's like, oh, these guys are cool. And so I used to talk about the 3 C's of B-Sides, and I had to add a 4th C, because once I realized what the first 3 C's meant, the 4th one came. Content, community, and conversation are what B-Sides are about. Content, community, and conversation. Connecting people with good content and having meaningful conversations. Well, it turns out if you do those 3 things, it has a positive impact on career. From people who want to join the industry, to people that are just coming out of school, trying to figure out where to go from school, to those of us that might have been in it long enough that we're figuring out where we're going to retire and open that little tiki bar and say to heck with all it. And the order of those varies by person. What's a successful B-Sides? This is easy. Most people leave happy. Most is important. you've met us, right? Whether you're in the hacker world or InfoSec world, you've met us. We're not going to make everybody happy. And the organizers leave content. Don't have to leave happy because we're self-critical. We tend to be very self-critical. But everybody leaves, most people leave happy. Organizers leave content. This team is talking about how to do it better next year. I'm going to make a plug. One of the ways that they can do it better next year is talk to them and make sure we have all the volunteers they need, although they have a phenomenal staff. But volunteers make this happen as well as everything else. If you're new to it and you want to know why some of us have the pride in this that we do, put the effort in that we do, put as much effort at the BSides wiki, securitybsides.org or .com. Yes, it's a horrible wiki. No, HTTPS is broken. It's PBWorks. It was not my choice. It was not Chris's choice. But now it's a classic case of software Stockholm syndrome. If you're not familiar with that, you start to identify with your captors. In this case, it's PBWorks because we have all these years of history in there. If you're an Oracle customer, you know what software Stockholm syndrome is. So anyway, there's a page of what BSides means to me. I won't reread them, but there's just, I don't know, there are 60 or 80 things on there. And words like local and content and family and career and approachable and different come up over and over and over again. So join us in that conversation, that community. And we'll get a little bit more about, community. I had to go there, right? Yeah, community. So we like to talk about the InfoSec community. We like to talk about the hacker community. There's really a lot of different communities. I actually like the sociologist term of tribes because tribes and nations kind of works better because they're hacker tribes and they're part of the big hacker nation. You know, we may show up at DEF CON, right? There's the InfoSec tribes. We may show up at RSA or InfoSecurity Europe, but we're different tribes, part of a larger nation. And one of the challenges I see, and one of the things that BSides can help with, is I see a lot of different splits. So there's one, when you meet somebody at an event, what do? I'm a hacker. Or I work in InfoSec, or I'm an InfoSec professional. And in there, those of us who straddle the divide, right? So I'm in China, or Chinese smoking jacket and top hat in my foolish beard, and I kind of fit there, and then I kind of stand out. But thankfully, there are folks like Whit Diffie and others who make me not look quite as weird on the other side. And it's a little awkward when our friends start to battle, and that happens occasionally. We get sliced up way too many ways. A lot of people do it as a hobby. They may be in technology or may not, but they love to hack stuff, and it's fun. That's cool. Some people just consider themselves professionals. Some people defend companies for a living, whether they're red team or blue team, another division I didn't put in here. But you're defending a major corporation or a small company. And then there's, us horrible vendor pimps, right? And then even amongst us, we have to fight over, I do services. You're just pushing boxes, or you're just pushing, really? Come on. And then there's academia. They don't understand the real world. We don't understand them, even though they have some amazing ideas. And then there's government and military. And if you don't deal with them, you tend to lump those two together. And that's a really bad idea. And then we stratify even in there. Trench warriors. These are people who actually do shit, unlike management. Various strata of management, executives, and then outsiders who have a lot of opinions. Couple of splits, imposter syndrome, and that's a little mean, Jack. It is. I did go there, but thankfully there are more people with imposter syndrome than the other. But we're best when we bridge these divides, and that's something I want to talk about for a minute. And that's what BSides can help do. So let's talk about hackers. A little over 30 years ago, the Hacker Manifesto came out, and Frack, the mentor, wrote it. Really resonated with a lot of people. I will say this. It was really not very well written. I get what he was trying to say, but he wasn't very eloquent. But at the end, there was one of the last paragraph, or almost, yes, I'm a criminal. My crime is that of curiosity. My crime is that of judging people by what they say and think, not what they look like. My crime is that of outsmarting you, something that you will never forgive me for. It's like, well, parts of that, except for the criminal stuff, I wouldn't try what people did decades ago now. It would be bad for you, especially if you happen to be somewhere where they'll extradite you to the U.S., because apparently we have no sense of humor, and we're really frustrated that we can't get like the Ukrainians and North Koreans, and therefore we just slam people that should get a slap on the wrist in jail for decades. But part of that, judging people online, I hate the phrase duocracy, but, some sort of merit-based thing. And it doesn't have to be brilliance. It can be participation. That kind of leads into things. So I am a hacker. Not this kind. There is a ton of really crappy clip art about hackers out there on the internet. I have found what I think may be the most accurate stock photo of a hacker on the internet. Just let me finish this and I'll give you. But what does that mean? I think it's there are all sorts of definitions. I'm not going to argue definitions, but I've got some ideas. One of the key ideas to me about what hacker means, it's not a criminal, it's not the mainstream definition. It's curiosity, a childlike sense of wonder and curiosity. Ooh, what's that? What can I do with it? Don't do that with it. What happens if I do that with it, right? Sometimes it's childish too, but that's a whole nother talk. Testing limits. We push things to the edge. Sometimes because it's fun to break shit. Let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. Sometimes it's fun to break stuff. But it's not just breaking stuff. It's how it breaks, why it breaks, what it took to do that, what the post-break situation is. How do I make it stronger? How to prevent or delay breaking. There's sort of a cycle of break, fix, improve, repeat, right? And part of that cycle in the earlier days of the hacker world, when everybody was on BBSs or met up at the food court at the mall or wherever people met, and at DEF CON and at some cons, was this. Learn, share, repeat. BSides are an opportunity. There are other events too, but we're at a BSides, so I'm going to talk about BSides. BSides are an opportunity to do this. Learn, share, and repeat. Now, my background is automotive, so this kind of reminds me of the hot rodders. Because we would push our cars until they broke, and then we would fix them and try to figure out how to keep that from breaking again. And then we'd do it again and again. And then about the second or third time, we'd be like, oh, time to upgrade the brakes because I keep running off the road now that I have more power. But it's the same cycle. But, the bottom line is that the world's a puzzle to us. We want to understand it. We want to play with it. We want to know where we fit into it, and we're one of the pieces we play with. So that's awesome. Look at that. Click, click, clicker happy. But here's one of our challenges. I'm doing this fun stuff. Oh my goodness, somebody's going to pay me to do this. I got a job doing what I love. This is not just a job. I have a career. This is awesome. I have made a career out of my hobby. But that means I've got to write reports. That means I got TPS reports. That means I got to explain why doing this to that machine is problematic. I have to explain why this exposes us. There are some of the early hacker community, it's easiest to spot in some of the Loft crew that became at stake and have scattered around. Some are at Veracode. It's a hobby. Holy crap, we can make money out of our hobby. Oh, it's like a real job. Oh my goodness, we've made a career out of it. It's not that fun anymore, but there's still a spark of fun. We've grown. You know what we need to do? We need to grow the company. So we need to find people who had that spark, that curiosity. Hire them and drive it out of them too. Oh, man. But money is part of that. How many people are dropping O-Day at DEF CON, right? And for businesses, I spend time talking to people that are trying to defend their environments. Bug bounties are cool. Bug bounties are a great evolution of not just not suing people when they find something wrong with your stuff, but actually encouraging people to do it in a controlled and, dare I say, responsible way, although I hate the word responsible. Responsible is usually a word that is used against people who find vulnerabilities. Responsible disclosure. And I'm not an elite hacksaw when it comes to breaking stuff, but all you have to do is pay attention on the web to find vulnerabilities. And I'm not saying burp running or anything else. You just, but the money has made it different. So what do? Remember what got us started. That's why we're here. Explore, learn, share, teach. Do things that are rewarding. One of the things that we found is, hey, take on a project. Remember you used to love to play with that? So everybody's playing with drones now. That's cool. Play with drones. Do cool stuff with drones. Raspberry Pi's been around for a few years. People are doing more and more, home automation stuff. You're certainly not going to buy the garbage that exposes your entire house to every idiot on the internet, including the people that sold you this stuff. So build your own. Do stuff that's fun. And then teach somebody else about it. And then they're going to be like, that's cool. That dude's smart. Or that woman's brilliant. That's fun. And I'm going really fast here, but that's all right. I can always just tell stories. So here we go. Somebody needs a hand, right? You offer somebody a hand. That's not being a hacker. That's being human. When we cross into technology and you offer a hand, that's arguably a way of looking at being a hacker. In my idealistic, not Fox or CNN News version of hackerdom. But it's like, I got spouse, I got kids, I got mortgage, I got like a job and stuff. My old buddy Gandhi, I think, said it best many years ago. The problem with altruism is there's really nothing in it for me. I think he's also the one that observed that the problem with Twitter is attribution's a bit sketchy. I want to tell you something about what's in it for you, what is in it for you with the altruism. I'm a serial volunteer. I have volunteered as a shipwright on a ship-rigged square rigger, volunteered as crew on that same vessel, have done a lot with BSides and a lot of other security events. I have helped organize and run blacksmith meets in the Northeast U.S. It's one of many hobbies I don't have time for anymore, but I play with. Served on the boards or advisory committees for everything from the New England Blacksmiths to Boston user groups, which covers everything from little tiny groups that do basically home user security, home user just trying to make things work, forget securing them, to the security, to the giant Windows server groups and the Boston Linux Unix. BLU's interesting. Everybody's got a Linux user group. BLU meets at MIT. That might tell you something. They're called Boston Linux Unix because they had to add Linux when that newfangled crap came in. That's how long that crowd's been around. So I've been involved in all of these things and put a lot of time in it. Plus, I make fun of RSA, but I'm on a program committee for RSA. They're doing short-term stuff, last-minute stuff where you can, a couple of months out, submit a talk that gets voted on by the public. That was a big change for them. I'm also working with InfoSecurity Europe on their intelligent defense tracks. And in the past few years, whole other series of talks, I've done a bunch of research on stress and burnout and survival skills inside the hacker community, inside InfoSec professionals, going into what's happening in DevOps. We all have a common set of problems, whole other talk. But I want to stress something. I did these I started this years and years ago. I started this when I was making most of my income still from working for and consulting for car dealers, trying to keep their networks running and minimize the amount of garbage that was in there. Get the worst of the bad guys out of their networks. But that's where I could learn, right? I could go to these user groups. I could go to these things. I couldn't take the time off to spend weeks or months at John Campbell Folk School or one of the blacksmith schools. So I became part of that group and I volunteered and I helped make it happen. And I learned and then I shared and I helped. And it's like, I don't know anything about blacksmithing, but I know what a broom is. I know which end I hold. I'll clean up after the meet. From there, I end up welcome in the forges of some of the most talented artists in America. I didn't do them to become successful, but what I discovered was it was part of the path. It wasn't my motivation. I wasn't networking with people to make connections to end up in a really awesome job, but it happened. And that leads me to one of my favorite people to talk about. If you've ever seen me speak before, I've probably talked about this dude, Newton. Look at that hair, man. That's awesome. It's like I'm growing skin on top of my head now. Yeah. Isaac Newton is famously quoted as saying, "If I've seen further, it is only by standing on the shoulders of giants." That's actually not an original quote of his. Somebody whose shoulders he stood on told him that when he was crediting one of his mentors or educators. But let's think about it. This guy changed the way we see the world around us forever. If I've done anything, it's because other people got a head start and I just took it from there. That's the kind of attitude that builds a community, right? And let's go ahead and be idealistic, Jack. One of the things that I will occasionally say about that is the critical thing is not being a giant. The critical thing is offering a shoulder for others. When you offer your shoulder to others, that's part of what makes you a giant, not the other way around. So, how are we doing? Man, I'm going way fast. Good. I can tell stories. This dude also said this. There are tons of quotes. He's kind of a smart dude. How are we doing? Side note about Newton. So we're in the process as a race, species, whatever, of trying to disprove Newtonian physics, to move beyond Newtonian physics, right? Who hopes that Newtonian physics hold at our level more than anyone else in the world? The people trying to disprove it. Because I don't know about you, but I hope that the sheer force of nuts and bolts actually works if I'm sitting on top of that stupid Large Hadron Collider. Like, I want that stuff to stay in there. I hope he was right. It can go weird under there. So anyway. We have some weird hobbies. Newton, besides the borrowed one, my favorite quote of Newton's is this: "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself and now and then finding in a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay undiscovered before me." So playing with drones, if you think that's cool, that is cool. Somebody else is going to think it's cool. Newton thought he was playing with pebbles. So, find your pebbles. That's one of the things that this kind of community can help you do. And we're going to wrap up really early, but here's a new thought I've had recently. So if you do these things and you become part of a community and you share what you know, you end up in front of a room full of people. Maybe figuratively, maybe literally. And in this case, literally, the spotlight lands on you. Always carry a little virtual mirror in your head so that you can reflect some of that light back on the people that helped you get there and some of the people that are coming up behind you that could use some credit for things that they don't know. There are too many people in the community that just trudge away. They may not have the personality. They may not be old enough to not care what people think, and they may not be comfortable making an ass out of themselves, so they may sit quietly, but there are people out there, and that's an age thing. The older I get, the less I care what people think. On some levels, and on other levels, it's completely the other way around. But so I share that spotlight. And there are too many here. I mean, obviously, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'll point to Chris again. Thank you, brother. He was a big part of getting me connected with the broader community, the 303 community. That's We're, grab the duct tape and the garbage bags. Let's go. Yes, Chris said that to me, and I followed. Like the second day I met him, hey, grab the duct tape and garbage bags. And I did and followed him. That may say something too. And there are other folks. There are people here who are in the process or trying to join the information security world. Befriend them, help them forward. There are people on that path. This week, I am thinking a lot about my friend Leslie Carhart. If you're on Twitter, you may know her as Hacks for Pancakes. She is an awesome young woman. She's just brilliant. She's a DFIR ninja, martial artist, geek, nerd, just wonderful. And she shares. If people ask for help, she does whatever she can. And so I just adore and admire Leslie. Unfortunately, this week she's suffering, having lost her mother to cancer this week. But we have friends that, could use something. Remember, we're all people. We get all wound up, right? It's like, the sock monkey's called screaming about something. It's like, well, teach them how to tune an IDS. But share that. And I could go on, but you know what? I think maybe we'll wrap it up with this thought. This is not the end. It's the end of my talk, but it's the beginning of this conference. It's the beginning of Security BSides in Calgary and pulling people together in this area. And with that, I'm going to end a bit early and let you guys brace for the next round. Thank you all. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jack. That was a great presentation and great introduction to BSides here for Calgary. Is there any questions from the audience here? No? Too early?
All right. My beard leads its own life. It has its own Twitter account, which I don't actually control. That's true. So the little game we play, older or younger than Jack's beard. December of 1979 is the last time I shaved. I only did that because I was in a rental and the stove pilot kept going out, and one day I threw the stove door open and it lit and the only way I could get the smell of burnt hair out of my face was that, so otherwise it would have been like 16 months older. And so it just leads its life, and it feeds off of whatever misses my mouth when I try to eat and drink. And as you can tell, I miss a lot because it's well fed. And the one thing is, I don't know what the regional equivalent, or maybe if they're here, Tractor Supply or General Tractor or wherever you get your equestrian supplies. You go into the equestrian section, and they have Cowboy Magic shampoo, Cowboy Magic conditioner, and then they have Cowboy Magic detangler. And the detangler is magical. It's just magical. It makes shine and glow and detangle, and and it makes people fondle your beard when you're walking around in Vegas, which is really weird. But I've been married over 36 years, and I am a very faithful husband. My beard objects to that at times when we're in Vegas together, but. Well, I can't there we go. The mohawk would be kind of sad at this point. Well, yeah, when it gets bad enough, I will do the comb over. I mean, it can't look worse than that thing on Trump's head.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
So you've been part of these conferences all over the world. What's the same in different places with people you meet in this community?
So what's the same and what's different? One of the things that's different that as an organizer I see a lot is the role of sponsors and the engagement level of sponsors. Germans don't like sponsors in their face. And so they have a very subtle role. And unfortunately, that means the sponsors aren't as involved unless they have people that are really part of the community. Other places, in Asia, for example, sponsors need to be a very prominent part of it or people don't take it seriously because I'm making huge sweeping generalizations. As far as the communities, some places have a more cohesive sense of community when we have an event there. Other places don't have a sense of community and they often build one. Not always. I'd like to be idealistic and says, tomorrow night we're all going to get together and sing Kumbaya and we're going to, it doesn't work that way. But there are places where it has made a profound difference and it depends on one of the things. One of the things is a void. There are places where the B-sides are, they do okay, but they have a healthy community and it's just another piece of it. Other places where there isn't a strong sense of community, it brings people out where they wouldn't normally get this sort of unfiltered and honest conversation. A couple of things that come to mind are Warsaw and Algiers. College students put those on, and they thought it was great, and they did it for a couple of years and graduated and went into consulting practice and brought more college students in, and so now the local security community has this pipeline from university to the industry based on the community they've built. Michigan was ripe for a catalyst. Doug Song got up and says, how come we're all at the first B-Sides Detroit? Why are we all in this room together and we don't know each other? It's like, I know you, you know him, but why don't we know each other? And that night they set up an IRC channel, they started connecting, and the whole Michigan security MISEC thing, that was one of the sparks that catalyzed that. And so it depends on whether there's a big sense of community, and they tend to reflect the local community. The one in Austin tends to be a little weird, although now they've grown to where they have to be more structured. The first few years, the after party was on a duck tour, except it was a duck tour that had unlimited alcohol flowing and live music, because it's Austin, right? San Francisco is up against RSA. There's a lot more developer spin there because people are writing software, right? Everybody at Starbucks or Pete's or heaven forbid, Blue Bottle is a CEO of at least two companies, right? But when they work well, it's because people connect and share. That's that. So there was another yes. Yep. So one of the people that doesn't get as much credit as she deserves, and I should have mentioned earlier, so thank you for that because it's going to remind me to say it. Michelle Klinger is the person who stays on top of events around the world. She talks to most of the new organizers, coaches them. I pick up the slack on a lot of those, depending on where we are, since they are global time zones and whatever. Also who they are. But she picks up most of that. The other thing that Michelle and I do is we deal with events that have opportunities for improvement. Overly commercial events where the sponsors or vendors is a danger. And it really is based on community sensibilities. And we will, have a conversation about it. I won't name any, but there was one last fall that people thought was overly commercialized. In defense of them, what happened is they came up short on sponsorship. So the guy who was the lead organizer convinced his company to fill in all the holes. And so that company was overly well represented. And so it was a legitimate complaint. They had a rational reason, and the organizer was as frustrated by that once we got in a conversation with him as others. Yeah. And then we get into the really ugly stuff, which is secession. When B-sides grow, people change jobs in this industry. We move. People do things, ridiculous things like get married and have kids and get divorced and have pets. And buy motorcycles and decide they're on the wrong side of the continent, or, heaven forbid, buy a boat and decide that it's moored in the wrong ocean, whatever. And if there isn't some thought into how you take a B-sides, and this applies to anything, right? If there isn't some thought into succession, if there isn't some thought into how your kids are going to inherit your house, it gets ugly. And the worst event problems we've had have been in people trying to take over, try to hand off, and when we get conflicts over, territorial conflicts, usually in a secession case. And Michelle and I, and sometimes some of the others on the board, get involved, and that's my role. And I try to be conciliatory, and I try to be calm and use the perspective of being, having been a dad for 35 years and doing these things and having some perspective on life. And I will admit there are times when I just want to grab people by the head and smash their heads together like coconuts so I can hear that rattle, but I don't actually do that. So that's and it's thankfully rare. But the things do happen. I mean, we're talking about 251 events around the world. You went there. Yeah, so for those that don't know, originally there were 3 of us who sort of were floating around the core of the B-sides thing once we realized it wasn't just one event. And it was Chris and myself and Mike Don, and we all have different views of the world. And the cool thing about that was when we agreed, it was cool, because if you convinced the 3 of us assholes that you were on the right path, like, okay, right? Am I lying, Chris? It's like, if you think it's okay, I think it's okay, and he thinks it's okay, it's probably okay. But, people go in different directions. And so we had some frustrations. And they were legitimate frustrations over how we handle finance, over how we handled promotion. And it is why B-Sides Global is a small organization now instead of a large organization which runs events. B-Sides Global basically does mentorship and brand management, including recently doing trademark. And that's what we do because the decision was made by some of us directly and by the community at large. We don't want the global org to run Vegas and San Francisco and be part of running Austin and whatever, because then we're competing with the parent body. And so what happens is B-Sides San Francisco, if they run a surplus, a little money rolls over to pay the hosting bills and accountant bills for B-Sides Global. So we had that one, and that took a lot, and we were all unhappy with each other at some level, and some of us knew that we were unhappy, but completely understood why the other one felt the way they did, and some of us are still friends, and some are not. But that's life. It all worked. Right. And there are a couple of events that spun off because they didn't want, they thought the name was going to melt down. And so there's some events that I think are great events. CactusCon, which is coming up really soon in Phoenix. It's a phenomenal event. Was a B-Sides. They moved. But yeah, it's people. It's hackers and InfoSec. You may have noticed we got some issues. I don't know if you've noticed this. We have opinions, and ours are right. Anything else? I think that's it. Thank you.